There are moments in music history that nobody planned, nobody announced, and nobody could take back. This is one of them. It was the winter of 1964, and the weight of America sat heavy on every black artist who dared to have an opinion. The civil rights movement was bleeding in the streets. 4 little girls had been buried in Birmingham just months before, and inside the industry, behind the velvet curtains and the champagne smiles, there was a different kind of war being fought. Quiet, personal, and no less brutal. Nina Simone was not the kind of woman you gave advice to. Not because she was rude. Not because she was unreachable. But because when you looked into her eyes during a performance, you understood immediately that she was not performing for you. She was performing for something older than the room, older than the audience, older than fame itself. She was playing for the truth. And the truth in 1964 was furious. Sammy Davis Jr. understood fame the way a surgeon understands a scalpel. With precision, with respect, and with complete awareness of how easily it could be taken away. He had spent his entire life earning the right to stand in rooms that were not built for him. He had charmed presidents. He had made Frank Sinatra laugh. He had tap-danced his way past every door that America had tried to close on him. And he had done it with a smile so bright it could blind you to the cost of maintaining it. That smile was not weakness. Anyone who called it that misunderstood entirely. Sammy Davis Jr. had survived in a country that chewed black men alive, and he had survived by being the most talented, most charming, most undeniable presence in any room he entered. That was not surrender. That was strategy, but Nina Simone did not believe in strategy. Nina Simone believed in truth. And that winter, those two philosophies were about to collide. The gathering was a private industry event in New York City. Not the kind with press photographers and red carpets, but the kind that actually mattered. Producers, label executives, musicians, the people who decided which voices got amplified and which ones got buried. Sammy was there because he was always welcome everywhere. Nina was there because, despite the industry's discomfort with her increasingly political music, nobody could pretend she was not one of the most extraordinary artists alive. They had crossed paths before. They were not strangers. There was even a mutual respect of a kind. The recognition that two people who have both climbed impossible mountains share, regardless of whether they took the same path. But that evening, something shifted. Nina had just come from rehearsing what would become one of the most important songs of her career. The rage in her was not fresh. It was structural, geological, the kind of anger that forms over decades of being told to wait, to be patient, to trust a system that had never once trusted her back. She was carrying it the way she always carried it, silently, carefully, and with devastating elegance. Sammy approached her near the edge of the room. His energy was warm, genuine. He admired her. That part was never in doubt. He said something to the effect that she was extraordinary, that her talent was beyond argument. That rooms changed when she walked in. And then, with what he almost certainly believed was kindness, he said the words that would define that evening forever. He told her that she might reach more people if she smiled more on stage. That the audiences, particularly the white audiences the industry needed her to reach, responded better to warmth. That she could keep her message, keep her music, but soften the delivery. That you could catch more flies with honey. That he had learned, over many years, how to bring people to your side without making them feel accused. He meant it as a gift, as hard-won wisdom from a man who had navigated the same impossible terrain. Nina Simone looked at him for a long moment. The room did not go quiet because nobody around them fully heard the exchange. But something in the air changed. The way it changes before a storm. When the pressure drops and the birds stop singing. She did not raise her voice. That was never her way in conversation. The thunder in Nina Simone lived in her music, not in her arguments. She told him that she understood exactly what he was describing. That she had watched him do it for years. That she respected the artistry it required. Because it was an artistry. Making yourself palatable to people who would prefer you didn't exist was its own kind of mastery. And then she said that she could not do it. Would not. Could not. Because the moment she smiled to make a white audience comfortable while black children were being murdered in church basements, she would become something she did not recognize. She told him that her face on that stage was the only honest thing she had left to give, and she would not arrange it for anyone's comfort, including her own. Sammy Davis Jr. was quiet for a moment. He had not expected that. He had expected either agreement or defensiveness. He had not expected to be seen so completely, and to have his own survival strategy named so precisely, so without malice, and yet so without softness either. What she said next was the part that stayed with people who heard it secondhand for years afterward. She told him that they were both paying a price. That his price was one kind of freedom and hers was another. That she was not judging him. She said that clearly, and she meant it. But she said that she had decided, a long time ago, that she would rather be refused by audiences who could not handle her truth than applauded by audiences who had only accepted a performance of herself. She said, "I am not in the business of making America comfortable. I am in the business of making America honest." And then she excused herself, because she had a rehearsal to return to. Sammy Davis Jr. stood in that room for a long time after she left. Several people who were present noticed it, though they did not know what had been said. They only knew that something had happened to his face, something that looked, from a distance, like a man reconsidering the terms of a bargain he had made a very long time ago. What makes this moment matter beyond its private drama is what each of them carried into the decades that followed. Nina Simone went on to record Mississippi Goddam, which radio stations in the American South literally returned to her label in pieces, physically destroyed because they refused to play it. She recorded 4 women, which some black radio stations refused to air because they considered it too raw, too unsparing, too unwilling to present black womanhood in any form that was not uplifting in the conventional sense. She stood on stages across the world, and she did not smile when she did not feel like smiling. She let audiences sit in the discomfort of her silence between songs. She made people feel judged, because sometimes the audience needs to feel judged. She paid for it in bookings lost, in label support withdrawn. In an industry that never quite knew what to do with an artist who refused to be an entertainer. And she never apologized for any of it. Sammy Davis Jr.'s story is more complicated, and it deserves to be treated as such. He spent the 1960s in an impossible position, beloved by white Hollywood in ways that created genuine tensions with parts of the civil rights movement. Aware of the contradictions in his own position, and unable or unwilling to resolve them publicly in the way that Nina Simone did. He would later, in the 1970s and beyond, speak more openly about race and his own experience of navigating it. He was not a simple man. He was a man shaped by a world that had given him extraordinary gifts and extracted extraordinary payments for them. But the exchange with Nina Simone had planted something. People close to him in later years noted that he spoke about her with a particular kind of reverence. Not the reverence you give a peer, but the reverence you give someone who told you a truth you weren't ready to hear and turned out to be right. There is a performance of Nina Simone from the mid-1960s that people return to again and again, not because of any particular technical achievement, but because of what her face does. She is not smiling, she is not frowning, she is not performing emotion in any conventional sense. She is simply present, completely and terrifyingly present. In a way that makes every person watching feel that she is looking directly at them and asking what they believe, and whether they have been honest about it. That face was not an accident. It was not a failure of showmanship. It was the most radical artistic decision she ever made, and she made it every single night. The industry wanted warmth. Nina Simone gave them something more valuable and considerably less comfortable. She gave them a mirror. Sammy Davis Jr. died in 1990, beloved by millions, his legacy complicated and human and irreducible. Nina Simone died in 2003 in the south of France, having spent the final decades of her life largely outside the United States, in a kind of exile that was partly chosen and partly imposed. She had grown tired of a country that kept asking her to be something other than what she was. But here is what time did to their argument. Today, Nina Simone is not remembered as the artist who made audiences uncomfortable. She is remembered as the artist who was right. Her music appears in films and documentaries about justice and struggle because it does not soften what it is describing. Her voice, that extraordinary voice with its classical precision and its blues depth and its fury barely contained beneath every syllable, is the voice people reach for when they need to feel that someone understood the weight of things. Feeling Good is not a song about feeling good. Anyone who has listened to it with their full attention knows that. It is a song about the terrifying and fragile possibility of freedom, sung by a woman who was not entirely sure she believed in it yet. And that ambivalence, that refusal to resolve the tension into something comfortable, is what makes it eternal. The smile that Sammy Davis Jr. asked her for would have cost exactly that. It would have cost the ambivalence, the fury, the honesty. It would have produced something more palatable and considerably less true. Nina Simone understood that. She had understood it before that winter evening in 1964. But that conversation gave it a name, gave it a shape, gave it the clarity of two philosophies meeting directly, and one of them refusing to move. She did not smile to make you comfortable. She played until you understood why. And 50 years after that room in New York City, the whole world is still listening.